Hi everyone, welcome to the 26th webinar in 12D's Industry Solutions webinar series. My name is Lisa Stewart and I'm the Marketing and Communications Coordinator at 12D Solutions. While we wait for everyone to finish joining, you might like to download the handout from the Handouts section. Our Industry Solutions webinars are designed to provide insights into overcoming challenges in an evolving industry in more effective and efficient ways. We'll keep running these webinars regularly and recording them for posting on our YouTube channel with links through our website. Our first 25 webinars from this Industry Solutions series, as well as 26 webinars from our training series, are available online if you missed those. During this live presentation, you'll be able to type your questions along the way, as shown on the screen, and we'll answer as many as possible throughout the webinar. At the end, I'll also read out some of your questions to the presenter if there's time. Today's webinar on 12D Synergy, Worksharing and File Replication Servers will be presented by 12D Synergy Technical Lead Richard Stollier, who has 17 years of experience in software engineering and technical architecture, and 12 years as a software engineer with 12D Solutions. In this webinar, Richard will take you through 12D Synergy's File Replication Server module. With our optional File Replication Servers, or FRS, you can save time and money by caching files at each office location. The 12D Synergy File Replication Server can be installed on existing infrastructure in remote offices that are connected to the central 12D Synergy server via a wide area network, or WAN. The 12D Synergy FRS can deliver important and needed data across the WAN ahead of time and behind the scenes, reducing demand on your infrastructure and speeding up access to files for users at your remote sites. Simple but flexible synchronization rules and routing plans can be set up to ensure files are transferred at optimal times to reduce bandwidth congestion. Our FRS is particularly useful for multi-office organizations where the WAN bandwidth is limited. Over to you, Richard.
All right, thank you very much, Lisa, and welcome to everybody who's joined us today. So in this discussion about work sharing and file replication servers, I'm going to start by talking about what work sharing is and what we mean when we talk about it, what some of the challenges are that business face when trying to work share across multiple offices, how data management systems can help you solve some of these problems, and how file replication fits into that picture. So what is work sharing? Increasingly these days, work is spread across teams that are either in the same office, so perhaps different departments in one office or on different levels, or in different distributed offices. So for example, you might have a team working in your main office and then specialist staff working out at a remote site. And this allows a business to do things like promote flexible work options like working from home. And increasingly, telecommuting to work is a necessary option either some of the time or in some cases all of the time. It allows a business to distribute work to domain experts without increasing travel costs. So if you do have specialist staff that are in other regions, why have to put the cost of flying them out onto your project? It allows you to take advantage of quiet times at different sites. So if you have a very busy office and a very quiet office, you might be able to farm work out to that quieter site. Alternatively, if you have a very busy project that needs to get done very quickly, and you do have offices in different time zones, you might be able to do round-the-clock work to expedite that project. But doing work like this across multiple sites with lots of different people can introduce a number of problems. So how does a business ensure that their project standards and their procedures are followed? Everybody works with very strict guidelines about file naming and how their jobs should be laid out on the file system. How do you keep track of all the data that's involved over potentially many years of a large project that also involves many people? And how do you ensure data integrity? When I talk about data integrity, what I'm really talking about is making sure that people are always working on the latest copy of their data and that people aren't overwriting each other's data. So how do we prevent mid-air collisions? And on top of all of this, how do we make sure that people are able to work share quickly by getting quick access to large data sets? And this is really part of the problem because as computers have become more powerful, the AEC data has become much richer. And that obviously gives engineers, designers and surveyors much more information about the world around them so that they can do their projects with much more detail. And that includes things like BIM, LAS and point clouds, ECWs and rasters and so on. But obviously richer data sets mean much larger data sets. And as the data sizes get bigger, the time to access that data does increase dramatically. And that can have an impact on staff both inside and outside the office. I mean, ultimately, staff end up just sitting around waiting for long transfers to complete. Really, transferring all this data around can severely throttle your network, and that ultimately impacts everybody, not just the people using the AEC data. I'm going to talk a little bit about networks, so I'm going to throw out some terminology. I'm sure that some of you are already familiar with this, so just bear with me. You will hear us talk about the LAN, that's the local area network, and that's really everything within your office. Now, heavy data transfer across the LAN can eat up needed bandwidth that's shared between all your office users, which can slow down file transfer. And on top of that, if you're continually accessing your network file servers, where all your files are stored, that can also slow down as they're serving up more and more information. You'll also talk about the WAN, or the wider area network, and that's what connects you to your external data sources and other offices. Now, sometimes people use the broader internet, and sometimes people are lucky enough to have dedicated links. Now, the speed of your WAN connection depends entirely on the type of link you have, or really how fat the pipe is. And when we talk about how fat the pipe is, what we really mean is how much bandwidth do you have? How much data can you transfer at an optimal speed at any one point in time? And heavy data transfer across the WAN connection can impact critical services. So just sending things like emails, contacting third-party clients, all that sort of stuff can be impacted by slow WAN connections or congested WAN connections. We've also discovered that a lot of the time in most modern offices, a large portion, say about 80% of the people in that office, are really just doing day-to-day stuff. They're working with Word documents, they're sending emails, Excel, general day-to-day office things. It's really only about 20% of the group that are working on engineering data, but this is the larger data set. So you really have about 20% of the people working on about 80% of the data, and that's what's clogging up people's networks. Now, data management systems like 12D Synergy can really help you address some of these challenges by providing and enforcing structure and guidelines with 12D Synergy's naming rules and job templates. You can control who has access to what with flexible, powerful permissions. And you typically enforce data integrity and data management systems with checkout and check-in systems. So for those of you who haven't used data management or 12D Synergy before, what you tend to do is access a file by checking it out first. While you have it checked out, nobody can access it, or rather no one can write to it, but people could read the old version. When you're done, you can check it back in and release it to everybody else. That also gives you the ability to keep an audit trail of your data. So you always know who changed it, when it was changed, and why it was changed. Now, 12D Synergy out of the box has added bonuses. 12D Solutions has been working in the AEC environment for 25 years with 12D Model. A 12D Model was built around your workflows, and so was 12D Synergy. It also works with folder-based data structures. So applications like 12D Model, TrueFlow, SpaceGas, and a number of other AEC products aren't just single files. They're a collection of files with potentially many folders and files within those folders. Most data management systems are single file, and without custom scripting or manual processes, which tend to be error prone, it's very difficult to use these data management systems with these products. So 12D Synergy handles this for you straight out of the box. On top of all of that, it provides quicker access to your data with what we call intelligent data transfer. And I'll talk about what that really means now. If you're not using 12D Synergy right now, most likely you're just accessing your files over the network. So your files are sitting up on a bit of a network server. And let's say you have a data set, an AEC data set of about 1,200 files at about 900 megabytes. Every time you access or open that data set, the application, say 12D Model, is going to want to read all that data, and it's going to do it every single time. Because most most Windows applications aren't network aware, they don't know how to cache information to make it quicker, and Windows networks don't provide that capability either. So intelligent data transfer in 12D Synergy is there to say, we only need to deliver you the files that have changed since you last did this. And that can really reduce the data set down. So from, say, 1,200 files to 100 files, and from 900 megabytes to 50 megabytes. And that can reduce your data up to about 91%, which is pretty significant. We went and spoke to one of our clients about how 12D Synergy was helping them in their business. And they told us that when they started, they had a 320 megabyte project on their network. And every single time they opened that 12D Model project, it took them 13 minutes, which is quite a long time to sit around and wait. With 12D Synergy's intelligent data transfer, they reduced that initial download time to 5 minutes. So the first time they opened it, it was all downloaded and locally cached. So that's already less than half the original opening time. And on subsequent checkouts, it only took them 1 minute to transfer the data, which is again another huge reduction in waiting time. they actually worked out it was saving them up to 4 hours per user per week. And on a small project of about 6 users, which went for about 12 weeks, they had their charge out rate at $150 per hour. They actually managed to save about $43,000 for that small project, which is a fairly significant saving. So look, I'm going to talk about how the file replication fits in and how this whole scenario fits into multi-offices in just a moment. I want to take you through the current 12D Synergy landscape so you can understand how it all fits together. So with 12D Synergy, you have a software server that you install on your own premises or in the cloud if you have cloud-based infrastructure already. And within your office, you have a number of different users who can access that server. They might be doing it from plugins within 12D Model, Microsoft Word, Outlook, or the 12D Synergy client itself. And it's important to note that that data is encrypted. Security is our #1 priority, so everything you send and receive is protected. Someone might be accessing that data over the internet from home. Maybe they're doing it offline in the field with our offline mode, or doing it with the new data synchronization tool with semi-disconnected tablets. So there's lots of different ways you can connect up to that server. So intelligent data transfer in that layout can save you time both in and out of the office. But let's really take a deeper look at what happens when you have multiple sites or multiple offices. So here we have an example where you have your central server, your 12D Synergy server sitting in New Zealand, and you have offices in Sydney and Singapore. And they all need to, or a number of different people need to download a 320 megabyte data set. So what happens? Even with 12D Synergy and its intelligent data transfer, each user is going to download that data set. Now on subsequent downloads, it might be small. It can be hard to predict how much data is going to be changed. But each time, those users are going to download that data. And that can significantly slow down your WAN and the WAN bandwidth at every office involved. And really that can continually impact your critical inter-office services. Now that's generally fine for single remote users. So if you're coming in from home, that's probably reasonable. Or if you have really great dedicated links between your offices, that's going to work really well as well. But once you start to have regular transfer of really large data sets, it can still become problematic. So how do you take advantage of work sharing in these types of distributed sites? That's where the file replication servers come in. These are new in 12D Synergy version 3, and they work by delivering the data to each office only once. So whenever a user wants a file, they go to their local replication server rather than the one back at your head office. And that can significantly reduce the strain on your infrastructure or backbone. A bit more terminology for you. We're going to talk about metadata transfer. When we talk about metadata transfer, we're really just talking about the information about jobs, the folders that are in them, what files exist and where those files are, but not the actual content. When we're talking about file transfer, we're talking about the content, the actual data involved in a specific file. So with the file replication servers, the layout of your landscape is a little bit different. You still have your central office with the 12D Synergy server and a user connecting from there. But they go back to their central server for files and metadata. Out at your remote office, you have a file replication server, and the user goes back to the master server for their metadata, but to the file replication server for their file transfer. And the file replication server does the work of going back to the main office to transfer those files for them. So how does that work with that scenario we discussed before? Now we have our New Zealand server, and we have Sydney and Singapore both with file replication servers. When the downloads occur, it works like this. Each office only downloads it once from New Zealand, and in fact, Sydney and Singapore can help each other out and transfer the data to each other, which can take further strain off New Zealand's WAN. So how's it work? From a user's perspective, nothing's really different with 12D Synergy. They request a file, they check it out, they want to open it. And in most cases, it'll be delivered directly from their local file replication server. If it hasn't been transferred over yet, it'll be fetched from the network on demand. So this is all managed with synchronization between the server, the master server, and the FRS nodes. And there are two modes. There's background synchronization, which is, as you expect, you check your file in and it can propagate out through the network based on some synchronization rules, and you don't have to worry about it. Or on-demand synchronization, which is there to ensure data integrity. So you might be doing your background synchronization overnight. That's great. But perhaps some work happened in New Zealand an hour ago and I need it right now. It's really not good enough to get an old version. That should never happen. So the FRS will make sure that you have the right version and will download it on demand over the FRS network then and there. However, this is really sped up by delivering only the deltas between file versions or the byte level changes. So you're really only transferring a small amount of data with each of these synchronizations. Now you can set up lots of different synchronization rules. You can do time-based synchronization around your needs. So different offices might synchronize at different times. If you have offices in different time zones, then perhaps they might synchronize at the start of their day and at the end of their day so you don't flood the network with transfers. Or you could synchronize different data types at different times. So perhaps your DWGs are being changed really regularly and you want to make sure that they're transferred in the background pretty much straight away. So perhaps you transfer your changed DWGs every hour and only your large ECWs overnight, because ECWs probably don't change very often and they're reasonably large. Alternatively, you can restrict data sets to particular offices. So if there's a job that only Sydney is working on, why bother sending it out to Singapore? Now, this is not about security. It's important to note that. 12d Synergy's standard permission model applies whether you're using the file replication servers or you're not. If you don't have access to a data set, you just don't have access to it. This is really about preserving your bandwidth. Why bothering the network with a large data set that Singapore doesn't even need? There's also different ways that you can configure the versions and how they travel down to the replication servers. So in most cases, remote offices really only need the latest working copy of a particular file because they just want to do their work. So let's say versions 4, 5, and 6 were changed. Most of the time, you really only want version 6. The ability to go back in time and have a look at what changed is really important and central to the way 12d Synergy works, but it's not something that you do all the time. It's really only something you want to do when there's a problem. So you can choose to synchronize only the latest versions, and then allow specific requests for historic versions on demand when people need them. You can also configure the FRS to favor your infrastructure using routing rules. So your IT teams will be familiar with your infrastructure and how various networks and offices perform, and they can control how the data flows through that network. It allows you to do things like support regional hubs, and this is probably best described with a bit of a map. So let's say we have our master server sitting in Sydney, and we have FRS nodes at Auckland, Christchurch, and Wellington. Now we know that if Christchurch wants to talk to Sydney, it's going to do it over the internet, which is not great. But there are fast dedicated links between the Christchurch and Auckland office and the Auckland office and the Sydney office. So the FRS can be set up to funnel the data down that path to take advantage of your network, and this is fully configurable. It's also all managed centrally, which is really important. For IT teams, it can be very difficult to remote into lots of different servers. So the file replication servers are all managed from the 12d Synergy administrator in one place. That gives you one central area to edit settings like synchronization and routing, and to gather statistics to see how data is flowing through your network. So you can tell if a node is over or undersubscribed. This is a bit of a screenshot to show you what the management console looks like. And you can see an example network here and some statistics on the right. And it's probably interesting to note, you can see the routing weights that have been set up. So we know in this case that the file replication server in Sydney would have a much better time fetching data from the master server than it would from Singapore. So it can be encouraged to let users transfer data that way. So look, in summary, Worksharing can provide many improvements and efficiencies to your business. There are some challenges to overcome around the processes and procedures that are involved in your day-to-day office that 12d Synergy can help with when worksharing. And file replication with 12d Synergy can help you workshare efficiently by reducing the data transfer across your entire network. So I think at this point I might see if anybody has any questions.
Thanks, Richard. Yes, we have had some questions through. Adam in Melbourne has asked, is this a physical appliance or a software application?
So like the main 12d Synergy server, the FRS is still a software application and you install it on your own infrastructure.
Great, okay. John in Brisbane has said, can two people at different offices accidentally change the same file on their file replication server at the same time?
That's a good question. The standard processes for 12d Synergy still apply. So from a user's perspective, they're still just checking in and out files. It doesn't matter if it's the file replication. You cannot have mid-air collisions and data integrity is always preserved.
Perfect. Ben in Victoria asked, what happens if my local file replication server has a hardware failure and stops working, can people keep working?
Yeah, that's another good question. The network is designed to be self-repairing. So if your local file replication server goes down, you'll automatically be routed back to the master server for your transfers. When it comes back online, you'll flip back over to that file replication server. And if you're trying to access files, it will hunt through the network to try and find them for you.
Okay, sounds good. Bruce in New Zealand said, is this actually going to be cost effective in a small survey business?
I'm not a salesperson, I may not be the best person to ask, but the file replication server is really designed to be scalable. So the pricing is scalable. It's meant to work for both small and large offices. So I think you'll find the price offering to be pretty good.
Great. I'm just going to read out one more for today. Jenny in Queensland has said, with all this data being copied around, how do we manage disk space at each file replication server, I guess, node?
Yeah, so the file replication servers are designed not to be permanent storage. Obviously, there is a lot of information that's flowing around and lots of different versions of data, and it can take up quite a bit of disk space. So the file replication servers will cache things out. They will remove them based on popularity. So if something's no longer being used after a configurable period of time, that will eventually be removed from that particular server. So if people need it again, it can be on-demand synchronized as necessary.
Wonderful. Now, we've had a few more questions through there, but I might leave it there for today, and we'll get back to everyone else by email individually. The recording of this webinar will be available in coming days through our website and our YouTube channels. Our next Industry Solutions webinar will be BIM Workflow in August. We've also got some great training topics coming up in the meantime, so do keep an eye on our emails and social media channels. If you need to contact us in the meantime, our details are on the screen now. That concludes our presentation for today. Thank you for attending, and we hope to see you at future webinars.